all I could think about was the situation I was in, my reality, the obvious thing that's changed in my body. I just didn't like anything about it, the way it looked, the way it felt. I was just afraid to go too far out, away from toilets. And it got to the point where I was thinking really, really dark thoughts, very neurotic, very pensive, introspective. Kind of felt like my life was over. Just by chance, I was on YouTube and Michaela Peterson's "Don't Eat This" video popped up, blew me away. That to me was like, okay, I've got nothing to lose. I'm so miserable. I'm so lost. I was just waiting, if anything, for something. The very next day, I started the diet. When I went carnivore for my depression, I didn't know that this was the solution to the reason that I lost my colon and then ended up being depressed in the first place.
Okay, welcome. We've got a special guest. We've got Lee, a.k.a. Kent Carnivore, with us. Or Lee or Kent, whatever you prefer. Where are you located right now? What part of the world are you in?
Yeah, so I'm literally in Kent, the Garden of England, so just southeast of London.
Okay, so evening time for you, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's 9 p.m., just gone 9 p.m.
Gotcha. Okay, so Kent, England. It's funny, my mother's maiden name was Kent, actually, so I think they were from England as well. So
it's a popular name in the States, I think. We don't get many people called Kent over here, but I was in the States a few years ago, and I came across two guys called Kent.
Oh, interesting. I guess you lived there your whole life, or?
Yes, yeah. Growing up here and still here.
I guess we'll get into it. The Kent Carnivore, where does that come from? I'm assuming there's some carnivore diet type stuff in there, but how did that evolve?
Exactly, yeah. At first, I thought I was a bit strange, at least around these parts. I didn't know of anyone that ate just meat and eggs and animal products. And so I thought, what should I call myself? And I thought, Kent Carnivore, let's represent my area and spread the message, get the word out. But I actually get quite a few comments from people that are 2 hours drive away, that have had similar surgeries to me, have found the carnivore diet and follow all the same sort of people. So it's amazing how common and popular this is actually becoming. So
yeah, it's definitely becoming popular. How big is Kent, by the way? How many people live there about?
Oh, do you know, I should know that, but I couldn't tell you accurately. It's not a huge area, but yeah, quite pretty in places. Lots of countryside and lots of farms and local butchers.
What part of England is it in? Because I'm clueless as to where that might be.
It's just outside of London. Yeah, it's 25 minutes on a train. You get to central London.
I see. Okay, very nice. Okay, so you'd alluded to the fact that you'd had surgeries and other people had. So would you mind sharing what that was about?
Yeah, I had my diagnosis of ulcerative colitis back in 2012, and it was quite mild and low end at the time, and so didn't really cause too many issues. Just obviously had some worrying symptoms at first with blood and mucus and stuff like that in the stool. So yeah, I was 24 during this time when I got diagnosed in 2012, and I went 2 years without medication because it was quite mild. After 2 years, it amped itself up, got a little bit worse, so a bit more severe, a bit more pressing, lost my confidence, more bleeding and stuff like that.
Let me just interrupt you. How did they diagnose it, by the way? It was just based on symptoms?
I had some biopsies. Yeah, I had some biopsies.
They did a biopsy, okay.
Through a sigmoid endoscopy.
Okay, so a definitive tissue biopsy. Okay, because I know some people will say maybe you didn't really have it or not, but you had a definite tissue biopsy, ulcerative colitis positive. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so I went 2 years medication free, and then when I saw the doctors again, when they prescribed me the drugs, they were a combo of steroids and things like that. I can't remember the specific name, but these just basically lowered bowel frequency, and just it gave me some relief when I flared, and I had a little bit more confidence to leave the house and things like that. It felt like they were working. And they certainly were in terms of addressing the symptoms, but I also took their advice to consume more fiber. So pretty common advice really for a GP. Eat more whole grains, vegetables, fruits, take the medication. And I did this for 3 years. And despite following all their directions, I wound up in hospital.
And how did that work with the,
sorry,
connection there?
Sorry, say that again.
I think we lost a little connection. I heard you say you did it for about 3 years, and then so how did those things go?
Yeah, even though I was taking their advice with the diet, including more fiber and taking the medications, over time this just got worse, and I was continuing to flare roughly 3 times a year, and then kind of went to 4 times a year, and never really went above that. But they were just getting noticeably more severe, more pressing, more blood, a little bit more discomfort. And so anyway, in the end, this was 2017, I had my worst flare, and I was used to going maybe up to 15 times a day. I think like the worst days I would have were like maybe 16, 17. That was like the most I'd ever go to the toilet. But on this last flare, the 2 days leading to being hospitalized, I was going 30 times. Just very, very severe and relentless. And I genuinely felt like I didn't have any more days left in me. So got on to the hospital. They basically ran some tests. They put me on steroids to get me out of trouble, and intravenous drip with steroids, electrolytes, because I was really quite dehydrated. And yeah, when they could, they fit me in to do another camera up the back end, and they had a look around, and they were really shocked because it was really quite mild not too long ago from that point when they'd last seen things. And it was just severe, from mild low end to severe all the way up. And I could see I didn't take any anesthetic, so I could read their reactions and everything. And I was like, oh, wow, this isn't good. Because you can't feel how much of your colon's affected. I was just looking at their faces and catching on to some of what they were talking about. So they were basically talking between them that I had probably a 50% chance with this last trial drug, which was a very potent immune suppressant drug. So that they let me know your colon's riddled all the way up, and we've got this one drug that may or may not help you. I think the idea was if it got me in remission, they would probably put me on drugs for life, some very potent drugs for life, getting out of hospital and just trying to manage this disease with drugs. But yeah, they put me on it, and I was on it for a couple of days longer than I should have been. Didn't work. And so the main doctor came in, just broke it to me, said, you're not going to leave the hospital with any of your colon. So the very next day I had ileostomy surgery. Gave me socks and a gown and that kind of thing. And the next moment, really, I remember them struggling to stick an epidural in my back. But the next moment I realised I was waking up. It had all done and quite a lot of pain. So, yeah, initially I was quite game to have it done in some ways because it was so severe. I felt like I was poisoned and my body was trying to rid this culprit or something, this threat. But what I was actually doing was just stripping layers of my colon. It was on its way to perforation. And so they had to do that. It was a life or death situation.
And at that time, those three, you were medicated that whole time on different drugs, steroids and other things that whole time.
Yeah, I can't remember the name, but yeah, I was taking the drugs all through those 3 years since when they prescribed it, and I was consuming what I believe to be a healthy diet, but obviously massively inflammatory.
Did the gastroenterologist or the surgeons that ended up dealing with it, did they ever talk to you about what diets you should or should not be consuming while this was going on?
No, it was never mentioned. At the doctors, that was it really, just increase fiber.
Increasing the fiber. And did you try to do that?
I was eating a balanced spectrum of whole foods. There was some processed stuff in there, a little bit of dessert after meals, but mostly I would call it a plant-based because it was probably 70% plants and then some lean meats, chicken and cod and things like that.
And that didn't help. From your experience, that didn't help any.
No, it just seemed to be more severe and pressing every single time I flared. Okay.
And so you said they tried you on a new immune modulating drug. Were you on some other immune modulating drugs before that? Because
no, I'd never touched anything close to that. It's almost like it spread so fast that they didn't know, and I didn't really know. It wasn't the funny thing about my disease. It did get painful, but it wasn't chronic. I wasn't really stressed out with the pain. It was more discomfort and convenience. It came at bad times, and I lost my confidence. It was a problem with work. I clean windows, and so I would leave the house and drive into the sticks in the middle of nowhere cleaning houses, and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, not today. But yeah, things just got worse and worse regardless of the medication and the diet, which I believe to be, at the time, reasonably healthy.
Did it cause you to lose a lot of weight?
Only through my last flare. I could not keep any food in. Everything was going straight through me. Even the medication I could see intact on the way out, which was quite worrying. I thought, what's happening to me? But I was losing weight very rapidly in the last flare.
And you said you tried this new potent immune modulating drug, immunosuppressive drug. How long were you on that for?
I think it was about 5 or 6 days, but I remember I was on it for 2 days longer than they said that any patient should be on these drugs.
Okay.
It was quite new, I think, at the time. And yeah, they were trialing it, but there was a 50-50 that I would be in remission.
This is back in what, 2017?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So they go on and you have the surgery. They did do the colectomy and you end up with an ileostomy. Is that right? That's
correct. Yeah. Yeah. And then obviously the nurses came round and just talked to me about how to manage it, emptying, cleaning, putting the bag on. Mm-hmm. They would obviously have a look at the output and they wanted to see if things were working. They were quite happy in terms of that area of things. And obviously after a while, sorry.
Were you still requiring medications at that point? Because a lot of times ulcerative colitis, when the colon's out, the disease is gone, as opposed to Crohn's where it affects everything. But
Right, right.
were you still requiring medications?
No, the moment I came off, it was just painkillers. If I remember rightly, it was just morphine in the initial stages and intravenous drip. And then they encouraged me to try and get up and move around, which was actually quite difficult. My abdominal wall had just been beaten quite badly, and trying to not hunch over to stand up straight and wash and just walk. They wanted to see me walk down the hall quite comfortably. Okay. And that was it. They basically gave me a little pamphlet introducing me to the company that I have to order my bags and wipes and different things like that to go forward. And when they were happy, they basically just let me go home. There was very little spoken about diet.
Was the surgery done laparoscopically through poke holes, or did they make a long incision?
I've got about a 7-inch scar from, it's around about 3 inches above my belly button, and then it goes all the way down to the pubic area.
Okay, so you had just an open laparotomy. Okay. That's a big surgery. That's a tough one to recover from sure. That's going to be challenging. Okay, so they send you home. Here's your ileostomy supplies and I guess follow up for surgery to make sure wounds healing and stuff like that. Any other advice? Did they talk to you about anything else, or what was a sort of long-term plan?
The only thing in terms of food that they mentioned was don't consume anything ultra spicy. If you're going to order a Indian takeaway, just go for the mild ones. That was really it. In the pamphlet, there was a list of foods that created gas. So obviously, because I have a bag, any gas does end up in there as well. And so that takes up precious space potentially. And so they just encourage perhaps don't eat some of these vegetables. Yeah. And also just there was other things that neutralize, if you like, smells and things like that. But it was never really a problem. The funny thing is now on the diet I'm on, I don't really have any of those problems anyway. No gas, no strange smells or anything. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you talk to people that have ileostomies because they have some really unique insight into their digestion. Other people don't notice it because you've got that intervening colon in there, and you could see exactly what's getting absorbed, what's not getting absorbed, what produces what symptoms and things like that. And so you've got no longer have a colon. You're using an ileostomy bag, ulcerative colitis, assuming you're off all the medications.
Yep.
What prompted further change to your lifestyle? Why did you decide to change your lifestyle?
The moment I went home, at first, initially, I was quite happy to be I was at my parents' house. I went back to my parents' house because I was quite weak, so that they can cater for me here and there. So it was quite nice just to be out of the hospital for the first night. But when I woke up the next morning, my mum, my dad, my brother, they all went to work. And now I'm just on my own. And I had some recovery to do. And I could have kept myself busy, but for some reason all I could think about was the situation I was in, my reality, the obvious thing that's changed in my body. I felt like I just didn't like anything about it, the way it looked, the way it felt. Sleeping became a bit of an issue, the thought of going to work. But when I finally went to work, that was worrying. And I was just afraid to go too far out away from toilets. And because some of this area, you go into the countryside and there's nothing around. There are no toilets. Yeah, you just have to carry it around with you. And that actually just got to me. I was instantly depressed, but this would go in waves and would get more severe almost, if you like, when I would flare, if you like, with my depression. And yeah, depression-wise just got worse and worse to the point where I was reaching out to the doctors for help, and there's something I didn't want to do because I understood that there was most likely psych beds included perhaps in correlation with therapy. But yeah, it got to the point where I was thinking really dark thoughts, very neurotic, very pensive, introspective, just insecure, lost confidence. I was single at the time. Felt like my life was over, regardless of this family support and things like that, and not having my disease. It just changed my life in a different way. So now I'm suffering with another problem. So yeah, basically what happened. And the funny thing is that I just went back to eating what I was eating. So initially I was consuming little bits of everything. So sure, there was some meat in there, but mostly plants, grains, always. Every meal was based around grains, fiber and things like that. And I quickly developed a love-hate relationship with food because I had a few obstructions, which are quite uncomfortable. I'm having to empty, so I would eat some food and then I'm having to empty, and there's gas and so I really just almost didn't want to eat, but of course I can't do that. I have to eat. And so, yeah, just a funny relationship with life, myself and food. And it wasn't until I went to the doctors for depression, they gave me a number to call. And I had a 45-minute conversation with someone who was going to refine how they would potentially treat me, combinations of therapy and things like that. And I felt quite good initially just for sharing personal things, bearing all these personal things with a complete stranger, getting it off my chest. But there was going to be a follow-up call, and that never came. So after a couple of weeks, I was thinking, I don't think this is going to happen. And actually 2 months went by and I'd heard nothing. And I realized quite a bit before that I was on my own again. For whatever reason, I didn't go back to the doctors. I didn't get the ball rolling again with this unit that I had a conversation with. And just by chance, I was on YouTube and Michaela Peterson's Don't Eat This video popped up. Just watched it and blew me away. One of the many pressing issues that she had, along with arthritis, juvenile arthritis and things like that, was depression. And the fact that she had cured all these ailments, that to me was like, okay, I've got nothing to lose. I'm so miserable. I'm so lost. I was just waiting, if anything, for something. And so I spoke to my partner who I'd met a couple of years before. And I said, I'm going to do this BBBE challenge. So after the Michaela Peterson video, all these other videos popped up, obviously like the algorithm on YouTube. So I'm now starting to be exposed to all these different videos. I grasped the BBBE challenge as quite a simple concept. And so we went to the store and bought beef, butter, bacon and eggs. The very next day I started the diet, and that's basically how that came about.
Okay. And what year was that, do you think? It was
2022, mid-July of 2022. So it's basically just encroaching on 19 months. I'm basically at 19 months right now.
Okay. And so just because you got an ileostomy, you've got insight into your digestion that most people don't have. You mentioned sometimes you'd have obstructions, probably material blocking the entrance to the bag. What were the types of foods that gave you problems with the ileostomy?
So the very worst things I could just list straight away, mushrooms are just absolutely terrible. Almost every plant, when you chew it, so anything quite tough like a mango, onions, mushrooms, broccoli, cabbage, however you chew and swallow that whatever state that was that you swallowed it does not change as it enters the colon. It's in exactly the same shape, size, and everything.
Completely undigested. Interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And that was amazing to me. I remember, it's like what you said, we don't have this insight until you wind up in this situation. And so it was a strange learning curve for me. I'm like, wow, that's really strange. Look at all these plants. And I remember having an obstruction with mushrooms. I've had one with mango. Mango's terrible, which is interesting again, because that was on the FODMAP diet. All this soluble fiber in mango, no, it doesn't break down. Like even if someone told me it's 100% soluble fiber, no, it's really bad. It does not change. And so I always say to people, if I cut a pyramid shape out of a piece of mango and just swallowed that will be in the bag and you can identify it exactly. It's right there. Hasn't changed. And pizza toppings were always an issue for me. Mushrooms, pineapple, onions, these kinds of things, they were always causing me problems. They also cause the most gas. Mushrooms are terrible for gas. Onions, cabbage, celeriac, celery. But you'd see the little broccoli florets, the tips of broccoli, carrots. And if you're going to eat these things, you should definitely be cooking them to death, honestly. Certainly if you have any kind of issues with the gut, that will help. But again, these fibers are pretty robust and you can chew it all you like. It creates what I call like a cement paste. And brown rice, again, I remember having an issue with brown rice, chicken and broccoli, which I was having quite frequently. And that brown rice and broccoli, that actually caused one of my worst obstructions. I was hospitalized because it just blocked me up so much. It struggled to go around the corner to enter the bag, and my abdomen, this was during my sleep, and a strange sensation woke me up, like, oh, what's going on? It wasn't that painful, but it was just really strange. My whole stomach above the bag had actually looked like it was folding over the stoma, where it couldn't get round the corner. And so now it's building up above in the stomach, and now it's rolling over. And when I woke up, I went to the bathroom, and I'm obviously a little bit out of it because I haven't adjusted. And I looked down and I freaked out, like it almost had disappeared into my stomach. And I had to pull my stomach up and push it round and aid the sort of exit of this cement plant material. It was really quite strange.
Were there any plants that did digest, for like breads and like for fine grains, I would imagine might break down a little bit?
This is the funny thing. Yeah, anything refined. So white rice, white pasta, white bread, they're fine. They're the only, and that's why if I say to people, if you absolutely have to consume carbohydrates, because I obviously don't advocate them for many reasons now. Funny thing is that the white rice, even though they're going to spike your blood sugar and things like crazy, the white refined grains are most likely the best option. But again, not good to consume for other reasons.
How often did you see meat making it into the bag? Was there ever an occasion where you had meat? I know it's absorbed pretty well, but I've talked to people where they said if they actually sear something and they char it really bad, the little charred bits would actually make it in there. Was that your experience or no? Or did you find everything absorbed?
I found obviously the majority is absorbed, and actually what the output looks and feels like. This, I don't want to offend anyone, but if you were to take, say, for example, to take a sandwich bag and you crushed some cereal up and really ground it up until it's just a powder, and you put the powder in the sandwich bag, and then you put water in that, just so that it's more water than the grains can absorb. So it's still quite liquidy. That's exactly what every single one of my bag's worth of output looks like eating any animal product. Cheese will thicken it up a little bit more. The more salt you add will just slow down the frequency of the bowel movements, holds onto the substrate a little bit longer. But if you eat a steak, you swallow chunks, raw, cooked. For me, it's all the same. It comes out quite liquidy. And I have been to the hospital and seen stoma nurses, and actually they were concerned. They said, the consistency isn't healthy because it needs to be more stodgy. And I just said, it will be like this because I don't consume any carbohydrates. I don't consume any fiber. And so even the potato starch, even though it's pliable, it's soft, I liken it a little bit to a banana. When you consume a banana, it's happy to play with even this surgery going around the corners because it's a little bit softer and more pliable. And potatoes are similar, but it does stodge it up. But I'm not going to consume potato starch, and I'm not going to consume bananas for multiple reasons. So again, it's funny that the insight that we have as ileostomy survivors, if you like, or ostomates, what we know, they don't seem to yet. And even though I say I don't really have any issues, no obstructions, no pain or gas, they don't think it's healthy. And I don't think they tell any of their patients, we've got a guy who does this, it really works for him, maybe you should try that. I don't think they like the sound of what I'm saying when I communicate these things with them.
Mm-hmm. So you saw a video with Michaela talking about her juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and depression. And so at what point did you decide you're going to do it, and how did that initially go?
That day, when I get an idea, I'm not really that patient. If I could have, I would have done it right there and then. But we pretty much went to the store and started the next day. And so I originally just started out setting myself a 30-day challenge, beef, butter, bacon and eggs. I never really thought at that time I was never going to have a sandwich ever again. I didn't think I wasn't going to go to the fridge and have some orange juice, because I used to love my orange juice, which is probably one of the worst things you can do. Not for my previous condition, but for other reasons. I never really looked at it like that. And that kind of helps. I think if you have the mindset like, this is my last chocolate bar, this is my last lot of ice cream, it's going to make it harder. But I just set out to do a 30-day challenge. And the crazy thing is my acid reflux, which wasn't really on my mind so much, but I was suffering daily with that. That went overnight. I've not had a single symptom of that in 19 months. My skin started to improve. And so I've got scarring from acne, but all of this is cleared up. I used to have like more patches and stuff on my skin. Acne on my back went after about 2 weeks. And then I noticed that after 3 weeks, I had all this energy, like it just came out of nowhere. Because for the first 2 weeks, I was struggling with the adaptation from glucose metabolism into ketogenesis and then staying there, trying to get in enough fat. That was the problem for me. I think I just wasn't able to accommodate enough fat in my diet. But after 3 weeks, as I was, adapting somewhat, my depression lifted. I was at work and I pulled over. It was a beautiful day. I didn't have breakfast. I worked the morning and my depression just lifted on day 21. And I haven't had any symptoms of depression. Like I think better, I cope better, my moods are regulated, my energy is very stable, sleep improved slightly, and everything else seems to have gotten better. Don't get any wax in my ears. There's nothing that hasn't at least vastly improved, honestly. Yeah.
And as far as the digestion, I no more gas in the bag, no more obstructions. There's no difficulties now with the stoma. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like that. It's a breeze. Eating meat is so simple, and I'm not aware when it starts working. When I used to have plant foods, I would get indications like, here we go. The food is about to enter the bag, because I could feel it. It was almost tempting not to prod around and aid the final stages of my digestive tract, if you like, to help some of the plant matter just move its way out. But with meat, I don't have to do that. Like my partner used to tell me, stop pushing. She's noticed now she doesn't ever have to tell me that, because I don't need to. It's not a problem.
Yeah. And do you have, I guess there's some follow-up. Do you have like annual follow-ups for this, or how does that work?
I think at first for the first year, it was like 6 months and 6 months. I saw some people. Actually at the time, it was all different stoma nurses. After that, I didn't see anyone. I just had a call about potentially getting, so I have another surgery that I need to have, and it's not because I'm sick. And it's a strange thing because I don't feel like I need the surgery, but I'm having to get into that mental gear that, yeah, it needs to be done, because they left a 5 centimeter stump connected to the rectum, and that all needs to go because there is no option for reverse. This is the healthiest state that I'm going to be in. And so that needs to go just to prevent like cancer production, mutation of cells and cancer production. So that was what that was. But I've been getting the ball rolling, and it's been over a year now. I've been waiting for this surgery, and nothing's happened. But I've been expecting any day for over a year now, and I haven't heard anything. I've had 4 pre-operation assessments. Nothing's come to fruition. But yeah, I don't have any sort of annual checkups. They just let me be now. And if there's an issue, I can always just stroll in or give them a call. They're around about 3 times a week, and they're quite flexible like that.
Yeah, it's an important point you bring up, that first of all, these inflammatory bowel diseases, ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, are very much on the rise. We see more and more people being diagnosed with them every year. And they do carry a significant increased risk for colorectal cancer to the order of 30 times the normal rate or something like that. Now, again, having maybe put it completely in remission, that little bit of rectum that you have left may be completely unaffected, which is interesting. Let me ask you this question, because the whole time you're dealing with this disease for many years, here, if it flares up, we'll put you on some steroids, maybe we'll put you on a anti-inflammatory or a immune suppressant drug. And they never talk to you about nutrition. And now you probably have heard of a number of people that have had Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. They've gone often carnivore, and they result. In fact, I did 2 consults this week with 2 young girls, both with Crohn's disease, both on the verge of losing intestine, and we're trying to get them to try diet, because hopefully that will obviate the need for that. Does it ever make you frustrated that maybe if you'd have known this 10 years ago, you could have avoided all this, perhaps?
Yeah, of course. When I went carnivore for my depression, I didn't know that this was the solution to the reason that I lost my colon and then ended up being depressed in the first place. And yeah, like you said, I do get an influx of comments on certain videos that I put out. Hey, I've been in remission for 5 years. I'm off medication. I was at a point where I needed surgery. I'm all good now. And so, of course, at first, you feel like you're being failed. I'm going to feel slightly bitter about this, probably. It doesn't raise my blood sugar anymore, but yeah, I'm always going to have that with me, that linger, that feeling, that bitter feeling, where it's frustrating that the professionals that I relied on couldn't help me, that they failed me and they failed so many other patients. I'm grateful in many ways. I don't know if I'd take it back, certainly because I'm helping so many people. That without this, I wouldn't have the meaning and purpose in my life that I have now. And so that's cool. It's certainly a silver lining. But yeah, for sure, I wish that the system was designed so that we could go and see perhaps naturopaths before just a medical doctor that prescribes you drugs, and the drugs don't work, the disease management.
You right now, you would rate your health as quite good. Mental health is fine. You feel pretty healthy, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Yeah, because this raises an interesting concept, because we hear so much about the gut microbiome and how important and vital it is to our every being, our mental health, our physical health. And you effectively really don't even have much of a gut microbiome. It's all been removed when the colon went out.
Right.
And the point that I've made is there are people like you that have lost their colon for whatever reason, and they live normal, full, healthy, happy lives without really much of a microbiome at all. As much import as people put on that is, wait a minute, what about these people that don't even have one? So it's an interesting concept.
I guess if it's present and it's problematic, that's a problem, right? But if it's problematic and it's not present anymore, maybe that's better, at least better. I don't know whether it's ultra healthy. I have questioned this a lot. I don't know whether it's relocated somewhat, like maybe partially in my ileum and slightly, I don't know. Another interesting thing is that a lot of the fiber that's fermented in our gut. Well, I don't have a gut yet. When I was consuming plants with my ileostomy surgery without a colon, I was still getting a lot of gas buildup. So I think a lot of what we think we know isn't exactly pinpoint accurate. It's not spot on, because there is.
I think there are some amount of bacteria that inhabit the small intestine, but generally it's generally considered to be fairly sterile. Obviously, the stomach is full of acid, and yet there are things like Helicobacter, H. pylori that can make it there. But in general, we're not considered to have a robust microbiome, particularly in our small intestine. Otherwise, we get this condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is considered pathologic. And so it's very interesting that whole sort of scenario that you're in now. Since you've obviously, I guess you said you're on social media talking about, have you had chance to talk with a lot of people with inflammatory bowel disease? And you said you've heard people that have actually put it in remission, hopefully without losing major parts. How frequently are you seeing that?
Every day. I get emails. I've had conversations. I've had calls and video chats with people. It's amazing. I had no idea to the degree of sufferers that there are out there, even in such close proximity to me. I thought I was something, a rarity going carnivore in Kent. Yet there's quite a few of us, and some of those carnivores have been through very similar situations to me. And if you look at the whole globe and you think in America and Australia and all these places, you think, geez, there's so many people that are suffering. They're in the dark. They're potentially where I was, just thinking that they're doing the right thing. Nothing's working. Again, that's a scary situation to be in, because the people you're relying on can't help you. You've tried everything. I was speaking to a fellow the other day. The things he's tried is pretty, it's quite upsetting. You think he's gone to such lengths, and he's going to try the lion diet. I think he said he needs to gain some weight. So I said, perhaps drink some raw milk if you can, tolerate it, gain some weight. And then when you're happy, go on the lion diet and try and transition a bit quite slowly and get in the fat. If it doesn't taste good, just stop eating it. Don't make yourself eat it if you don't want to. And we'll see. I'm hoping he'll let me know. But I get it all the time. I get some very personal emails. And it's funny because I just watched those two females you were talking about. I just watched your update. It was like a few hours ago, I think, about those two. I think it was two fathers going in on.
Yeah, this morning. In fact, I had both of them like last week. They were like, or the other day and last week, it was like, I'm getting a lot of Crohn's. It was funny that both fathers concerned about their daughters and both had Crohn's disease. And it's the system is letting these people down, in my view.
Yeah, I get that a lot. So the people I talk to mostly are uncles, fathers, mothers of children, which is really, again, quite upsetting. So I'm talking mostly, not directly often, with the sufferers. Some of them are young, some of them they're honestly skeptical. They've been exposed to some information, but they don't buy it. And they ask me, help me, how can I convince them? And what video would you suggest? Because they won't watch many. And yeah, it is pretty crazy.
On the good news is there is a case series out of Harvard on, I think, 10 people with IBD that's going to come out in the literature probably later this month or next month. And hopefully that'll propel an interventional trial. Because I'm in the background trying to make these studies happen. And stories like these and hundreds, if not thousands of others are compelling to at least study this. I think it's really unethical not to study it, in my view. I know some people are saying it's unethical to study a carnivore diet. I'm like, one, people are doing it anyway. And two, a lot of people are getting benefit. And it just seems unethical not to study it. Let me ask you about, so you're on an animal beef, butter, bacon, and eggs is how you started. I don't know if you're still doing that, but have you noticed any like issues with any of the animal products, like dairy? You mentioned dairy products, cheese kind of gums it up a little bit. What have you noticed within the realm of animal products is how it affects your digestion?
So for me, again, I didn't actually realize how many people suffer with things like eggs. I've personally never been aware of any suffering with animal products across the broad spectrum. And since having an ileostomy surgery and being on the carnivore diet, I can pretty much tolerate anything. All I am doing now is being mindful of both quality. I buy what I can afford, and I don't now consume as much cheese. Again, for multiple reasons. I think cheese can be a slippery slope. I think if you start to eat cheese as a dessert, it's quite tempting to start doing that regularly. You've got those casomorphines, and so it's quite addictive. But you've also, from the casein protein itself, can be problematic with autoimmune sufferers. And so people like myself who have had an autoimmune disease, where we tend to have a proclivity to have multiple. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of steered me a little bit away from dairy. Not that I had any issues stomaching it. But yeah, I don't drink raw milk. I was having a little bit of raw milk to gain a bit of weight because I did lose a decent amount of weight when I wasn't able to get enough fat in. But again, I don't need that anymore. And that's a very slippery slope indeed, because it's quite sweet. It tastes like the sweetest thing on the planet. When you have some raw milk, it's it's like honey almost. It's that sweet when you adjust to eating just animals and you haven't had sugar for so long. It's very sweet on the palate. And so I don't moderate so well. So I don't drink milk anymore, and I barely touch cheese. If I do touch cheese, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week max, a very small amount, and it's always raw. I tend to go for goats and cheese because they're slightly lower in casein, I think. But eggs are fine. I've even tried pork and chicken. Pork doesn't affect me like chicken does, and so I don't really bother with chicken. It's not acid reflux, but it's almost just on the fringe. It's quite high up in the chest. It repeats on me, if you like. So I don't bother with chicken, even though I do enjoy chicken. Love some crispy wings and legs and thighs and stuff like that. But I've given that up. So I pretty much base my diet on beef, occasionally lamb, eggs, just to get me to satiety as a cheaper option if I haven't got enough meat and stock, kind of thing. Butter's absolutely fine.
Okay, yeah, so that's a dairy product that you'll handle. And butter, obviously, you don't have as much of the milk solids in there. Particularly ghee is like probably even better. But you said you struggled getting enough fat initially. How did you resolve that, or how did you do that?
I think it just took a bit of time. I remember having some rendered down fats in the slow cooker. And in the beginning, I was eating like more pork and bacon. If I ate too much pork belly, pork chops with the rendered fat, that would be a little bit overwhelming. It's almost like I wasn't making enough bile or something. And so I think it just took time. I always tried to push the limit with fat. Whether that was a good idea or not, I don't know. But after 3 weeks, I felt pretty damn good. But it took about 4 months. I'm always honest with people. It took me 4 months to completely rid all the cravings. I don't even think about carbs and plants and juices. And it all just looks really strange to me now. I wouldn't ever want to put that in my system. But I think just giving it time and trying to continue to get it in your body adjusts. And I've noticed a difference in being able to consume more fat. My energy's better. My mood's regulated. I can fast quite successfully now, where in the initial stages I couldn't really fast for too long. I was eating 3 meals in the beginning, then it went to 2. Now I eat once a day almost all of the time. Every now and again I'll have a breakfast. Every now and again I'll just eat twice if I fancy it.
What do you find the transit time between ingesting your meal before you have ileostomy output on a once a meal day? Is there like a 12-hour, 16-hour lag between when you have to, do you know how long it's going to be?
Yeah. Again, it does depend on how much fat and how much salt. And again, I think I've eaten some more raw and I've eaten some more like cooked and rendered down. Obviously do prefer to cook my beef. I enjoy it more that way as well. But if it's just a ribeye and a sirloin, I don't add in any extra fat and I salt it properly and just listen to my taste buds. It's probably 4 hours before it starts, the first initial bit. If I were to add more butter, like bone marrow, if I had like too much bone marrow, it can go through me in 3 hours. And then from that point, it can take, again, it depends on how much I ate, how much salt I had, but it can take anywhere from 6 to 9, maybe 10 hours to be completely empty. I would say I usually finish eating by 5 p.m. I always finish before 6, otherwise I'm often waking up in the night to go for a wee. But yeah, if I finish at 5, I've emptied like a bag and a half, and then I've probably got another lot left. And if I'm lying on my back and I fall asleep, my metabolism slows down anyway. And obviously with gravity working, it's not like I'm standing upright. Things slow down. I can get 6-7 hours sleep in before I need to get up, and then I'll just get up, empty another bag or whatever, and I'm through with it. It's done.
I don't know if you consume in pounds or grams, I don't know but if you eat 500 grams or a pound of steak, how much will end up in the bag? And again, this is this 9 hour or so time frame, and I'm just trying to guess what this is. Yeah.
I've found that if I eat less, it doesn't go through me as fast. So if I only ate 500 grams, I've probably easily got 4 hours before the first initial parts start to hit the bag, and then it will be reasonably slow. If I were to consume, I usually eat around about 1 kilo of red meat a day. And sometimes in the beginning, it would flush me out a little bit at first. And then it would be then slow after that. But now, again, I've adjusted. I can eat 1 kilo of meat, 3.5 hours later, the first bits start to come out. And then it slows down. It just slows down. And I would say 500 grams may be equivalent half a bag, something like that. It's almost like you absorb more and hold on to it as well. I don't know. It's difficult. I haven't done too many experiments because I wouldn't want to just eat 500 grams of meat. I would always eat at least 1 kilo, really. And if I've got, I'll probably eat a minimum of 700 grams of meat and then have eggs with it. So there's always more mass of food, if you like. But yeah, that may be equivalent of 2 bags, perhaps, or something like that.
So for a kilo, and I don't know how much is in an ileostomy bag, or I'm sure they vary in size to some degree, but so do you find that? Do you ever have any digestive problems at all? Now, you said with fat, you felt like sometimes you couldn't make enough bile. Were you getting a lot of fat entering the bag then, undigested fat?
What would happen is really strange, actually. I would feel slightly nauseous. Like I say, it was overwhelming. Oh, okay, I've eaten too much fat. I'm not ready for that. I pushed it a little bit. What would happen is, if anything, nothing would really happen with the bag for a little bit. And then all of a sudden it would the relief would come from, oh, wow, I've got a whole bag. You just accumulate a whole bag in half an hour, and that would relieve me of that nausea. And that clearly I wasn't uptaking the fat. I couldn't use it. It was too much. And so it just goes almost straight through you, because obviously without a colon, it doesn't stodge up. You're not reabsorbing the water and the salt and that. And you don't have this convenience of having that extra part of your digestive tract that holds on to the substrate. It's out faster, because obviously it would be queuing in the colon and then stodging up, where mine comes right out in that liquidized form, and slightly faster, obviously, where it's shorter.
You'd mentioned you have a partner. I don't know how long she's been with you, but did she know you prior to all this, or was it
Yeah, I met her when I was depressed, but it wasn't in my darkest stages. So she was actually a customer of mine. I cleaned her windows, and we would talk every 6 to 8 weeks, and that just blossomed and developed, which helped me a lot. I felt like I've got like somewhat of a normal life now, and I wasn't severely depressed, at least for a couple of years. But depression, I think people that suffer you're never safe, and it seems to come back no matter what. And it's funny, it seems like a very ungrateful thing to say, but regardless of having all my family support, which I have plenty of, my lovely partner was so supportive, the fact that she was accepting me for who I was, and that wasn't enough. There's obviously something wrong, and the fact that I've not eaten any plants for 19 months and I haven't been depressed. So she's seen huge changes. Everybody's seen huge changes. My mum's now carnivore. My brother's carnivore. Some of my friends are carnivore. It's crazy. And she couldn't be happier, because it's not good to be around someone that can only think about themselves in such a dark way. Everything swallows everything around you and brings people down. And it wasn't fair on her. Not that it was intentional. As these things would come and go, I'm sure that became a little bit much for her. And she's super grateful that I'm on carnivore now. So
you're eating effectively a kilo of meat a day, and maybe some eggs in there. How doable is that in the UK? Is it very expensive? I know a lot of people say they couldn't afford to do it. How does that compare to your previous diet, for instance?
I was drinking a little bit of alcohol. I would have a couple of beers in the evening as well, even after having the surgery, when I couldn't wait. The first beer I had was Guinness. Thought, oh, that's a healthier one. So I was drinking. I would have carbs 3 times a day, like carb-heavy meals, snacking in between. I remember looking forward to Fridays and Saturdays. I would have a takeaway, which would cost me £35, £40 for 2 or 3 of us. And going out to eat as well. I don't do any of that. I don't go out to eat. I don't snack. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. My hobbies are right here. I play the piano. I paint portraits. I jump rope and make videos. So all in all, I can afford to pay for some very high quality meat, a lot of it every single day, and it doesn't cost me any more. But I'm not miserable anymore. And so it's just a priority of mine. I think where there's a will, there's a way. And I think if that's your priority, you'll find a way. And it can be expensive. There's certainly some high quality butchers and regenerative farming practices, like pasture for life practices. The prices are higher, but I justify it. I wouldn't change this. All we have is health and time, and my health and my time has improved hugely. I don't waste a lot of it. Once a day, I don't think about food much, and shopping's easy. I go to a butcher shop, which they really appreciate, built a nice rapport and a relationship with the butchers, and they're grateful. The funny thing is that they don't even know how healthy the stuff that they're selling is themselves. They're like, oh, is that good for you? You sure you should be eating that much? So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. You have to educate the butchers and the cattle ranchers and all that stuff about what the product that they have. And, how are you back at work? Are you doing your regular job again?
Yeah, I went back to work about 10 weeks after my surgery, and it was just slow. Cleaning windows is a lot of stretching, and so that was tough, and just getting used to things being totally different. But now, same thing really. I've been cleaning windows for years now, about a decade.
So are you self-employed or do you base out of a company that you go to?
Yeah, so I'm self-employed, but I have my work is provided to me by someone who pays me 65%. So I'm a free agent. I can choose where I go, what I do. I also do gutters and conservatory roofs, insides, and a little bit of jet washing in the past and things like that. Just, that you can cater for customers' needs and things like that. And I can price up jobs, and it's like my own business, if you like. I pay my own taxes and self-employed. Yeah, it's just quite it works for me. It suits my personality.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess I was going to ask if you had a bunch of coworkers, but it sounds like just one other
Well,
person. I guess you have some regular customers that probably use you periodically, I imagine.
yeah. I see people 6 to 8 weeks. And again, you build a relationship with them. I see a lot of different people suffering with all sorts of problems that most likely could be mitigated with this diet. But yeah, it's not like I work with colleagues, but that my boss, Mark, he has multiple employees that he provides the same 65% work with, sheets of work kind of thing. So we regularly see each other, and quite a few of them have actually at least tweaked the diet. It's heavy meat, low carb, no grains and seed oils, that kind of thing. So good changes.
Yeah, I think the UK in general is fairly vegan friendly relative to some of the other European countries that have quite a large, not that they're still a very small minority, but do you get any pressure, hey, you shouldn't be eating meat or that type of stuff directed to you? Obviously, this is helping you tremendously, but do you experience any of
I've
that?
not experienced it in person, believe it or not. Maybe it's just because I live in quite small circles. I go to my butchers and back, to my customers and back. I visit my family. That's it. I don't really run into many vegans. They probably wouldn't want to go to the butcher shop.
Yeah, I was going to think, I don't know how far you are from, there's a town called Kendall, which I think is in the Lake District. Is that far? That's probably a couple hours from you, I would imagine, right?
Sorry, you're breaking up there. Did you say?
I was going to say I went to a butcher in a place called Kendall, which is in the Lake District. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yeah,
town,
that's not too far. That's not too far. Yeah.
Yeah, the butcher shop there, the guy won Butcher of the Year in the UK. So really nice guy. He's a son of a friend of mine, David Unwin's son. And so if you ever get bored and you want to drive up there, I think it's called what's the name of it? It's called, I can't remember. I'm blanking on the name of it. It'll come to me after we finish, I'm sure. But
I'll have a look. I can search it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a butcher in Kendall, and it's really nice. He does some really good cuts of meat. Have you had any downsides since switching to carnivore? Have there been any negatives that happened to you physically? Any problems?
Only in the beginning 2 weeks with energy. A little bit after that, I did have a few nights, if you like, where I had some leg cramps, but now that I don't get any of those problems. I don't take any supplements, no electrolytes. And I'm supposed to be at higher risk than the average person with electrolytes, not having a colon. So that's, again, it's interesting. I can't think of any downsides. But again, in the initial stages, watching my partner eat something that I'm not going to eat, that was testing. But now, not a problem. People apologize to me. They're always, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't be eating this. I'm so sorry. No, I'm numb to that now. It's really strange. That just looks crazy to me, what you're eating. It doesn't even appeal in any way. So I can't think of any negatives. It's just improved everything. Everything's improved.
Yeah, the butcher I was talking, it's called Roast Mutton. So Roast Mutton is the name of the butcher up in Kendall if you get a chance. But it's interesting because I'll walk through the grocery store and you'll see that there's just mountains and mountains of processed food. It's pink and blue and fluorescent green. And it might as well be rocks as far as I'm concerned. It's like I've got zero interest in this stuff anymore, which is really an interesting thing. I'm like, well, let me go see what kind of steaks I have in the back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a strange. So your partner, does she do a lot of meat, or is she just totally does her own thing and has no interest in what you're eating?
So she supported me in the first 30 days. She went BBBE with me, and she got her blood sugar normal for the first time at the time in 13 years. She lost all this body fat and felt so great. And she's not even gained a single pound. She's just right on the mark. Every time she weighs herself, she's exactly 140 pounds, give or take a pound. But yeah, and so after BBBE, she started to include cheese, and then she quite rapidly started to include things like avocado and olives, because she didn't justify it the way I was justifying. It wasn't like that urgent that she sticks with it. And obviously her daughter, so she has a daughter, Sky, who's 14 now. She lives with us, and she's quite interested. She's mindful. For her age, she knows a hell of a lot more than the average 14-year-old. But I would say they're loose keto. I would call it loose keto. They're probably in ketosis most of the time, but they have, every now and again, they have the food freedom that they'll buy a donut every now and again, you know what I mean, and have a sweet coffee and some fruit, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a comment about how interested they were about how the mango was actually so hard for you to digest. And obviously you could play the experimental game and I'm going to try an apple and I'm going to try a banana and I'm going to try a grape.
Yeah.
And basically from your experience, almost nothing, no whole plant food that was raw digested, even fruits. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Any whole plant food is a problem. So it doesn't break down. However you finish chewing it, that is how it enters the colon, at least. Most people won't be aware of that because there's a point where it's condensed and it changes, like the water's coming out of it. But if you've got a problem in your small intestine, you've got Crohn's disease, you've got a problem in your large intestine, you could have diverticulitis. You've got to think that those vulnerable spots are being beaten up quite badly by the fiber, these inflammatory foods that haven't broken down. And again, I wasn't aware of this when I had ulcerative colitis, and I tried everything. I was desperate, and it wasn't obvious to me. It took me to have this surgery to wind up in the position I'm in to actually see the reality of things. I don't doubt that a lot of people can eat a lot of whole plant foods and be healthy for a long time. I'm not saying that's not possible. Certainly if you're not consuming highly processed foods, seed oils, alcohol, you don't smoke, you exercise, you get some good sleep, you're going to be healthy, certainly more than the average person. But you won't be aware of how certain foods are entering your colon. And so if certain individuals suffer with IBD, IBS, diverticulitis, anything like that, those people can't afford certainly to consume fiber. And then the problem there is that when you take the fiber out, now you just got all this sugar and this fructose in the diet if you're not eating fiber. And so it's difficult. I can't justify advocating for any carbohydrates. Not that I'm super dogmatic, but from what I've learned, I just can't justify advocating for any plants regardless.
Yeah, because honestly, if you take all the fiber out of the diet for GI purposes, and then and you're still including carbohydrates, you're going to have starches and sugars basically, and that probably metabolically is not particularly healthy. So what are you left with? You're left with meat at this point.
Right.
And you see most people with IBS and in many cases, the recommendation is more fiber. And like you said, you don't even digest any of it. We've known that about Insight, but it's particularly interesting to see even things like soluble fibers, like fruits, like bananas, still end up essentially undigested.
Yeah,
That's kind of interesting
to
see.
Like I say, bananas, refines, those things are more pliable. They're softer. That you won't notice a particular shape or form. Like they're a little bit problematic. They stodge things up. But any whole plant foods, whether they're on the FODMAP list or not, if they're intact, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, salads, even what people deem to be friendly, like mango, they are not. They're really quite bad. And if you have IBD, you should definitely steer very clear from those.
Yeah, at least in your experience. I doubt, I suspect most people with ileostomies would have the same. Because I've interviewed a few over the years, and the one thing that, like I said, that I didn't hear you mention was steak that's been cooked crispy or it has a real nice sear to it ends up undigested. Do you find that? Do you sear your steaks pretty well? Or?
Do you know, I don't ever burn anything. I just don't believe that we should be burning anything. That's just me personally.
It doesn't taste good when you burn it anyway.
You know, I used to love so like apple crumbles and pies and anything that had the burnt corners and the edges, even burnt bacon. And I used to love that stuff. Anything crispy and burnt, I actually used to really like. But the moment I went down this route of I want to be consuming what's healthy, what's good, I want to practice everything that I should be to optimize my health. I can't, in my head, it just doesn't make sense that I burn my food every time I eat. That's just me. I do get a little bit of a sear. I seal the meat. It's certainly really dark sometimes on the outside, but you just won't ever see like black griddle marks or anything like that on my meat. So maybe that's the difference. I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, I've had very well cooked meat. I've had meat cooked in slow cooker. I've had raw meat and eaten chunks, swallowed it partially, hardly at all. Organs, everything. And it's always the same. The color may change a little bit. If I have more pork, if I have cheese, obviously it's going to change the color. But if I'm eating just red meat, it doesn't matter what cut, doesn't matter how much I cook it. To me, as far as I know, I don't see any evidence of anything recognizable. There's nothing recognizable, nothing intact. It's all liquefied, liberated, non-inflammatory.
I'll tell you what, Lee, this has been very helpful. Thanks for doing this. I'm sure there's going to be some people with ulcerative colitis listening to it or have family members or friends that have done this. Hopefully it will give them more sort of at least chance to maybe question things and perhaps try it. So I guess your advice to somebody that has got a diagnosis of IBD, whether it's Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, any just basic recommendations on how they should proceed?
To me, you just need to wean off the most fibrous foods at least. So things that perhaps are obvious, things like celery. I know my daughter's dad's partner or wife now, she's got Crohn's, but she just won't have any of it. She snacks on celery and things like that. And I'm amazed that she's still kicking about, honestly. So definitely wean off of the most fibrous. And so think about anything like cabbage, celeriac. I know mushrooms, they're a funny thing, really. They're almost like not a plant. I wouldn't say they're fibrous. They're quite rubbery, but things like that, onions. I think we all know what we've perhaps seen, carrots and peas and sweet corn. That stuff is a nightmare. Anything with the skin and the seeds, that's the issue. At least get rid of those parts, cook it to death if you're going to eat this stuff. But like I say, if you really have to, you can't justify going carnivore or even keto, I would just say limit the carbs, cook the ones that are problematic, and perhaps even go for more refined. Again, it's hard for me to really advocate for that stuff, but my advice, honestly, would be wean off the carbohydrates, starting with the most fibrous, wind up in some kind of ketogenic diet. Carnivore to me, is king. Red meat is king.
Fair enough. Thanks again. Appreciate it, Lee. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you.